While I've had a very busy week, there is not much to bring forward this morning. However, one of the questions that were put to me by several reporters during the past week was if there is any update about the decree that the government sent to the governor. There is no update as yet other than the decree is with the governor. The governor has not signed it as yet. We expect the governor to do so. And I've taken note of the campaign that has started or is ongoing and has even now moved, according to some Facebook posting that I have not seen since I'm not on Facebook. But of course, I live here and people communicate that they have taken their campaign even to The Hague. It is interesting to read some of the statements made by the leader of the UP party that the people's rights are being trampled upon. I don't know which people he listened to, but if we seriously listen to the majority of people in this country, they're telling you we have voted last year and we are not voting again. We are not going back to the polls if there are elections in February because we have already voted. One of the things that we have said is that we are not taking away the rights of the people of St. Martin to vote or to have early elections, and it sounds like a broken record because I've said this now in every press briefing. Why was a decision taken to dissolve Parliament? A decision was taken to dissolve Parliament because the government that was there at the time lost its majority. What does a government that loses a majority have to do? The Constitution is clear: tender your resignation. The first reaction from the governor to Marcel Gums and his cabinet was, you have lost your majority through a motion of no confidence. Article 33 says you have to tender your resignation. 3, there is a majority in place, so I see no reason why the formation of a new government cannot take place. To that, they objected. They objected. Now, where are we? The government says we want new elections because we have to stop ship jumping. And I've said this 101 times, and I don't mind saying it 102 times. If we hold elections without making any changes whatsoever, will ship jumping stop because we held elections a few days before Valentine's Day? No, it will not stop. Because if ship jumping has been taking place from the very first election, elections were not well over in 2010 that we had the first ship jumper. And between 2010 and 2014, we had an additional 2. And for the first, we had an additional 1. And for the first year in 2000, after the 2014 elections, we have had 4 so far. So by holding an election is not going to make it go away, simply will not make it go away. On top of that, during the period September 30th to when the government left office, we have taken note of the differences of opinion on the interpretation of Article 59. We have also taken note of the stance of the former Prime Minister and his cabinet on the so-called interpretation of Article 33, that yes, you have to tender your resignation, but it doesn't say when. So there are a number of things that need to fix. We have decided in our decree, in our draft decree that we sent to the governor, that 2 weeks after the decree is signed, a committee of 3 persons will be appointed to research and to make recommendations to government that will go to Parliament. There are some ideas that several politicians or members of Parliament or members of government, and including my person, there are some ideas that we have that will be thrown in the mix, and we are confident that once sufficient time is given, that when we go to the polls, there will be clarity on the articles in our Constitution and our electoral laws. There will be a provision to ensure that ship jumping would be basically, as far as I'm concerned, eradicated. And one of the issues that I lost my trend there, but there's one of the other issues that was raised by the UP leader in his remarks I saw this week. Once I get back to it, I will deal with it, but it is totally ludicrous what they're talking, and it is purely a campaign to mislead the people of St. Martin and to make it appear as if the government that is there now is purely a greedy government, greedy for power. It is so ironic when you see that a government that came to power because of ship jumping, it was okay for that year that they were there because of ship jumping, and now that there's a shift in government because of the same ship jumping, now ship jumping is not good. And the people's right is being trampled upon. The people's right, what our forefathers fought for, is being denied. Were the people's right trampled upon when the red, white, and blue coalition was handing in their final report, and you lick the stump out from under them? That is not what the people voted for. The people didn't vote for Cornelius de Wever to be on that side. They voted for Cornelius de Wever on the slate of the Democratic Party. They voted for Leona Marlin Romeo on the slate of the UP Party, on the USP Party. So it was good then. It was good then. They took 8 months to complete the formation of their government. When we came with 5 ministers in less than a month, they jump and criticize it. A few days after, another minister was added, and another one will be added shortly. We have not taken 8 months and won't take 8 months. So, as far as I'm concerned, it is political hot air and rhetoric, and it's the same thing about the government, the National Alliance-led government is preventing a decision by GEBE. My God, there has been no directive from this government towards GB about the purchasing of a generator. If there is any stalling, I challenge and I ask any one of you, you are free to go and ask anybody in management of GB, ask the board of GBE if they have met with government, with anybody in government, and told them, here's a purchase of a generator, we need a decision from you so that it can go ahead. If we write everything that politicians say, and people read everything that the newspapers print, that politicians claim, that is the disservice that we do to our people when politicians mislead the public as to what is truly taking place. What they're doing is hiding their incompetence for the past year, hiding the fact that rather than staying in St. Martin and addressing the issues that are affecting St. Martin, they were constantly off island, in Santo Domingo, in Miami, making arrangements. I wouldn't want to use the word deal, but making arrangements apparently for all kinds of things that when questioned in Parliament, answers were not forthcoming. One of the last experiences that we've had with Minister Claret Connor was shortly after he moved from tourism to Vromi. When he was called to Parliament, the response we got was the minister was sick and couldn't come to Parliament. The next day, the minister was on a plane going to Miami on GB's expense. GB paid for the ticket, GB paid for the hotel, GB paid him a per diem, which is wrong. Which is wrong. The minister is not a GEBE employee, and therefore GBE should not have been paying for the minister to travel to Miami. And when asked what he went to do there, we never, ever got the answers. But the leader of the UP party protected the minister by, in his statements on the floor of Parliament, indicate that he happened, the leader of the UP happened to be in Miami and gave the minister a ride to a meeting where a presentation was being made about a possible sewage waste to energy plant that they are operating in one of the cities in Florida. These are the things that are not talked about, are not written about, but we make great headlines. Make great headlines. The UP leader is accusing. If you're accusing, bring the facts. Bring the facts. We always talk about double-checking stories. Let them bring the facts. Where GBE has sent to government a request and the government is blocking it to prevent progress for this country. One of the things that they did not say, well, at least I have not read that yet, would have been to accuse this government also for the lack of a generator over at the receiver's office. People who went to the receiver's office and to the census office yesterday to pay bills, among other things, to pay their taxes, others to receive money, others to do certain transactions, had to return home without getting their business taken care of. Why? Because of the electricity outages. And one would say, well, don't they have any backup system, the UPS or whatever that gadget is that holds the data and holds the current for some time? It's just to make sure that in between switching over, it holds the information and keeps the system on. But if there's no backup generator, it goes down. And then when it goes down, some of them have difficulties to reboot and to get them back online. That has created a problem for us. Where are we? The former government failed to take a decision to purchase a backup generator. They seemingly was renting one from someone. And when the person was not paid for their generator, the company, they simply did what anybody else would do, pick it up and went with it. What have we decided on yesterday? Instead of purchasing a generator, you may or may not know that the new government building under construction, under preparation, has 2 large backup generators. So why reinvent the wheel? Why purchase one? So you will be seeing, probably when you leave here, you can probably run across and you will see it. And if you won't see it now, you will definitely see it by the end of the day. I'm sure work is being done to run a cable from the government building on the Pondville across the street to the census and the receiver's office. What government would have to pay for basically is the cable that we will purchase. We have people who will make the connections, and if GB goes down again, the census office and the receiver will be powered. Because of the heavy traffic, because of garbage trucks loaded with garbage, we will create sort of a traffic bump whereby 3x6s will be placed side by side, run the cable in between there, lap it over with some more 3x6, and then cover it with asphalt. So you will see a traffic bump. It is not necessarily to slow down traffic coming in or out, but it is to secure the cable to prevent any damage to the cable. But that is one of the immediate precautionary measures that we will take to ensure that our systems there do not go down in the event there is a problem again at GBE. So yes, the tactic of this government is, because if people would ask the UP leader, what has your government done for the people of St. Martin over the past year when you guys were in office? There is nothing he can say that they have done. Some of the things that they were proud to accomplish was to immediately after taking office, when the Prime Minister said he knows nothing about rainforest, and then about a week after, you find out that the Prime Minister signed off on a long lease agreement for the rainforest, whereby the canon fee has been set way below what it should have been. So when locals go to the same government and ask them for land, they pay the maximum of the canon, and when the friends of the leader of the UP go to the same government, the ministers are instructed to make a deal for them.
Our society is made up of morals and values. What do we mean by morals and values? Morals are also called principles. Morals are habits with respect to right or wrong conduct. Morality is ultimately a personal compass of right and wrong. Values are standards or ideals. Values are important and lasting beliefs shared by the members of a culture about what is good or bad and desirable or undesirable. Values have major influence on a person's behavior and attitude and serve as broad guidelines in all situations. One important result of morals and values is integrity. Without morals and values, there can be no integrity. The word integrity is much used in our society of late. That is understandable, because integrity is one of the main building blocks of a well-functioning democracy. Without integrity, corruption can take hold of a community. Corruption is defined by Transparency International as the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. The gain can be either financial or non-financial. In a worst-case scenario, extreme corruption could lead to poverty and could be the cause of hardship. An impoverished community can quickly turn chaotic and unstable. This scenario should make it clear that the fight against corruption is necessary. More importantly, every one of us, as citizens, must take responsibility for this fight. We should all be concerned about the spread of corruption, which can be compared to a virus capable of crippling government, discrediting public institutions and private corporations, as well as having a devastating impact on the human rights of populations.
Have you taken a decision or informed the members of Parliament that due to the strict or very limited cake that you have in the budget, that they may have to probably cut or stop attending the Parlatino meetings?
That's Parliament.
But the Parliament has a budget.
Parliament has its budget. And Parliament, just like anybody else, needs to stick to its budget. And there should be consequences if you exceed your budget. Exceeding your budget is possible, but it has to be with a formalized budget amendment. But that amendment to increase your budget can only take place if there's liquidity to be able to support that budget amendment. So part of the problem throughout the years that brought us to the situation that we are in now is that nobody adhered to their budget. And measures have to be taken, like I mentioned earlier, that I'm coming with a proposal to the Council of Ministers, that budgets be monitored on a monthly basis, so you don't hear 9 months later on that somebody exceeded their budget.
Thank you. Minister Lee of Labor, I think I brought this to your attention privately, but now it has become a public nightmare. Just recently I got information And what I'm talking about, going back to 2013, our former Minister of Justice, Roland Duncan, signed an exchange agreement with Sonesta Great Bay, where they're allowed to bring in workers from Sandals Resort, replacing locals. Just a couple months ago and even weeks ago, workers, local St. Martiners, are being laid off after 25 years of service. And they're trying to get help from the Labor Department, and all they're getting is go back, come back, go back, come back. Even the union of that company that is representing that company is not doing their job. Have you been looking into this, or do you know about this? Did the Labor Department tell you about this agreement that Minister Duncan signed with Maho Group? And what are you intending to do if you didn't get it yet, but when you get it, what do you intend to do about it?
Yeah, I'm not aware of it, but you're saying that the agreement was signed by the Minister of Justice,
Farmer.
so I don't know what the Labor Office would know, but it's something I can look into. I know you've brought it to me personally, and that you've had family that worked there, and there were issues, and that's something that I will look into, but I'm not familiar with it, no.
As for the Minister of Justice, Acting Minister of Justice, just in case, have you seen that agreement that was signed, and do you intend to do anything about it? Because if people are coming from Barbados, Jamaica, and Timbuktu, how do they get a permanent residency permit for a temporary job?
I have not seen such an agreement, and it rings a little strange in my ear, because I doubt if any Minister of Justice, present or former, have the authority to sign an agreement with anybody in terms of work permits in that manner. That's the job of the Labor Department in terms of, and depending upon what requests come in. So even if there's an agreement made, it's unenforceable in my mind.
What if the Minister of Justice was also the acting or the replacement Minister of Labor? Does that possibility exist if the Minister of Justice is also the person that replaces the Minister of Labor? So at the same time, he's holding the same portfolio.
Well, you know, we could continue in this matter with hypotheticals and then if what, and suppose that is this, and suppose that. I think we need to, everybody, get the facts first before making conclusions. Delve into it, see what it is, and then you can start analyzing it and drawing conclusions from it, as opposed to hypothetical discussions back and forth, if this, if that, if the other.
Thank you very much for your questions. Bibi Hilbert Hart, Today newspaper, you have the floor.
Minister Gibson, the explanatory notes with the draft law on the road tax contains a remark that the previous government had a package of measures to increase revenue without giving any further explanation. Increasing the road tax was one of them. Do you know what other measures that government had in mind, and do you still support those measures?
Have not spoken to them, have had no meeting with them, have no idea what those measures were. And as you know, in the past, as far as budgetary purposes are concerned, there's always been talk about we will take this measure, and it's outlined to which measure it is. And if you listen to Mr. Achebakker, the president of CFT, he will tell you that throughout the years, none of those measures produced 1 cent. So the approach that I have is not to talk about measures, but first take the measures, whatever they are, see what they produce, and then include that in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Herbert, for your questions. Cornelius Mary, SOS Radio 95.9, you have the floor.
I have one question to Minister Myers. The question for you is, we know that there were some upgrades going to be done to the front street and back street. What are your updates on this?
I have heard also from the former government that there was some agreement with the harbor, but in my discussions with the ministry and so forth, there is no knowledge of any agreement with the harbor to upgrade the front street and back street. It do have urgency. It has my attention, but to endeavor in that right now in the high season, I think would be unwise. But again, as the Minister of Finance has indicated, we would have to look at the 2016 budget and see what we can do with the Front Street and Back Street. It's in dire need of repairs here.
Thank you very much. Prime Minister, what happens if the decree that you submit to the governor is not signed? What's the next step after that?
One of the things that I always say, I don't waste energy on if, it's like asking if you win $1 million, what would you do with it? Or if a car runs you over tomorrow afternoon, what will you do? We have sent the decree to the governor. My point of departure is that the decree will be signed, and if not signed, then we deal with it then. I am not focusing on if it is not signed. My focus is on it will be signed. There are certain advices that came for my office, to my office for me to sign off on in connection with elections, and I have not signed them off. They're all on hold because as far as this government is concerned, there will be no election on February 9th, and as such, my focus is not on what happens if the governor doesn't sign. My focus is on the governor will sign the decree. To tie in with the question you just posed to the minister, I had a meeting with the management of the harbor along with Minister Lee on another issue this week. And in that discussion, at the end of it, the issue of Front Street came up. And the director of the harbor said that indeed they are willing to contribute to the repairs of Front Street, since it's the harbor that basically paid for the execution of it. One of the issues that we discussed was the fact that it was not done the proper way from the beginning. The Front Street, Back Street is on a sandbank. Basically, there's water, so to speak, at the bottom there. And because they're not sealed, anytime it rains, water seeps through the cracks in between the bricks. And that creates a situation when heavy equipment, particularly if you look at it, some of it, when you have Carnival and those heavy trucks loaded with speakers and people in the just jam in one place. The music stays one place and the jam, jam, jam. If you drive through Front Street, particularly, you would basically see the print of trucks that have created these things. Now, like Minister Gibson just said, we can talk and talk and talk and talk, but it makes no sense if we don't undertake action. So yes, the harbor is prepared. There has not been any meaningful discussion with the previous government and the harbor as yet. This government will engage in a discussion along with the Ministry of Romy, and it will be done.
Thank you.
Cornelius, thank you very much for your questions. Leader Singh, the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Thank you, Citri. Good morning, ministers. Okay, question for Minister Gibson. Yesterday, the chairman of the CFT mentioned that none of the previous finance ministers have been able to increase tax compliance. I know you have been only been there now 2 weeks, but you are a financial guy as well. So can you say where you think the whole increase of tax compliance went wrong?
I think we have to wait until I leave to be able to determine that. I have every intention at this point in time to do something to make certain that tax compliance.
No, but I'm asking, what have you seen the reason why the others have failed on that tax compliance? Where did we go wrong? Because that's an integral part of increasing the budget.
Don't want to speculate, don't like to speculate where they went wrong. All I know is we've got tax regulations. It says what the rates are, it says what you owe. You got to go and get it.
Yeah.
Why are we not going to get it?
Yeah.
I certainly intend to go and get it. So whether or not I succeed in that area, we'll have to talk at the end.
You've asked for a significant overdraft, of course, cover expenses in the coming months. How do you intend to cover that along with all the other debts that we already have?
The projection in terms of liquidity is that This overdraft will cover the shortfall we have by the end of this year, which is about 3 million.
Okay.
And by the second week of January, the liquidity will increase to be able to pay back that overdraft and get back on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alida, for your questions. Andrew Digg, Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Yes, good morning. Prime Minister, the airport managing director, the Minister of TIAT is not here, so can you maybe let us know what so far has decided or any meetings with the board anytime soon?
The government has not met, the Council of Ministers did not meet with neither the managing director, neither the board to discuss the way forward. As far as I know, there is a process ongoing with that involved decisions made by the previous government based on the outcome of a screening. The managing director has appealed, and the appeal was to be heard by the appeal committee that supervises the work done by the VDSM, the National Security Office. So they conducted the screening, and one has a right to protest against the outcome of the screening, and there's a committee that consists of the judge, the chair of parliament, and the deputy chair of the Council of Advice. The three of them meet to review the screening report, look at the methods that was followed, were they in accordance with the laws and whatnot. There is a part of the screening that is secret, and only the judge gets to see that. The other two members don't. They are told what is, let's say, what was there. That's the law and that's the procedure. While I am Prime Minister, I do not get the report either. So it is not so that the Prime Minister gets the report and the Prime Minister gets to peruse it and go through it and say, hey, great job, a bad job, or fair or not fair. There are procedures in place that regulate these things. If you want to change them, then we would have to change the laws that we have.
Okay. And last question, Prime Minister, on the Minister of Justice, how far are we on getting one?
How far are we on getting one? We are days away, hopefully, on getting one. And days, I'm having fun with the statement days now, because the outgoing Prime Minister said back then, with the use of Article 33, it says that you have to resign. It didn't say when. Others felt it should be within a day, others within 2 days, and the Prime Minister then took 30 days. So when I say days away, I don't mean it days like between Monday and Tuesday, but I'm confident that the process won't last 8 months.
Did you see the agreement that former Minister of Justice Roland Duncan signed off with this Ernesto Majo? Because I have a copy and I don't want you to be accused of leaking. So now I'm asking you, do you know about this agreement?
No, I don't know about it. What I'm saying, I don't know. At that time, I know there were discussions about some involvement, and when I questioned the minister myself, and he said at the time, I don't want to go on record saying things then that is not correct. But I think at the time he said what it was, Majo had an exchange program with some university or some hotel where they send their students here for training. Shortly after that, I left office, and I don't know the details of it. So if you have a copy of an agreement that the minister signed, I think it is in your good right to divulge what is in the copy or write about it, but don't hold me responsible for something the minister signed, because I know it was not something that was brought in a council of ministers, and the council of ministers said, great idea, go ahead. So if you have an agreement that you think it's a bad agreement or should not have been signed, then I think it is your good right to publicly, made it known or address it, because you're asking me to respond to something that I don't know the content of.
As per the decree, my colleague asked you about the incoming Minister of Justice. Based on the information I've gathered, the report or the screening report was somewhat flawed. Are we expecting to see the candidate that was put up by the USP to take office, or is it someone new?
You are again making statements that I don't know where you got your information from. If you are saying here on record that the screening report was flawed, then you're telling me to sanction that statement that you have made. The point of departure should not be the screening report was flawed. Then the next question would be, how did you come to that conclusion? Where did you get that information from? Then the impression would then be created that the document that is a secret document is being leaked.
As VDSM.
So I'm saying I'm not entertaining that kind of discussion with you.
Are we seeing a new minister or the same candidate? Because you said maybe before the end of the year. Maybe.
A candidate is being screened, and that is one of the problems that we keep having in this place, in this country, that we want to protect the candidates, let's say, by not providing information. One of the things that I said to many reporters, do not create news, report news. So if the screening is done in confidentiality, saying that the candidate is Peter, Paul, Mary, or Harry, screening of a candidate not passing the screening has nothing to do with any criminal act that the person may or may not have committed. Once you mention the candidate is William Allen, and William Allen is not sworn in, then speculation starts about all the wrong things he or she may have done or didn't do, and then we start to wonder what was in the report. We create our own reports on the side about what is fact and what is fiction. Let the screening take its course, and when it is completed, it will be mentioned, this is the candidate who will be sworn in as Minister of Justice.
Maybe Shaw, thank you very much for your questions. Hilbert Har.
Yes, one question for Minister Meyers. Part of the plan for the ring road, if I remember correctly, was to create a roundabout at the spot where we now have the traffic lights that constantly don't work. Is one of your solutions for that location right now to create that roundabout?
That would be a long-term solution, so not in the immediate future right now. That is one of the long-term solutions, yes.
No, but not right now.
But not right now.
Okay, thank you.
Hilbert, thank you very much. Cornelius.
I have one question for Minister Lee. That's concerning your visit to Cuba. I believe it's a very good initiative, but I would like to ask, is there any focus area that will be targeted when, if ever, an understanding is reached? What are areas that you personally, through, I guess, for the Ministry of Health, would be addressing in terms of sending to training or persons to get trained?
You're speaking just on the training perspective?
Yeah, training perspective.
They're receptive to all kinds of people. I mean, from emergency medical technicians to nurses to doctors who want to do continuing education. They're receptive to everything.
Thank you very much, Cornelius. Alida? Andrew?
Yeah, Minister Myers, the FBO permit. I know Minister Malin last week mentioned that you see no problem in getting that to go along. So has that come up already?
Yes, that permit was handled in the Council of Ministers of the previous government, and they were requesting some additional information concerning the construction costs, if I recall correctly. and we are awaiting that information to finalize that permit request.